Hey everybody, what's up? This is Tim with today's SCE. Hope wherever you're at, you are doing awesome and crushing it. Thanks so much for tuning in. So I am shooting from Pocono International Speedway. Right now I'm in the middle of a 3-day road racing course. That's just pretty awesome. And one of the things that came up in yesterday's classroom instruction time, I just had to bounce back to everybody because it's something that we've talked about, and yet it is so cool to hear some of the best in the world talk about the same concepts, and not only talk about the same concepts, but hear that they in fact struggle with them and also need to be reminded of them. So the title for today's shoot is Always Look Where You're Going. And as you can see, we got the grandstands in the back, and as we kind of walk along this way, I'm going to have to try to back up here without falling over. Way down there in pit lane, they're getting the cars ready for us. That's actually the north end of pit lane, and in the IndyCar and in the NASCAR races, the cars are coming at us from that direction, whereas in our particular course, we actually run it a little bit in reverse and then go through the infield. So at any rate, yesterday during the classroom time, the owner of the racing school and the primary instructor's name is Dennis, talked about the fact that one of the things that you got to do to be a great race car driver, and actually one of the primary things and probably the most fundamental, is always look where you want the car to go. And that sounds pretty simple, right? You always want to look to where you're going. The place where that becomes a big time issue is when things don't go your way, whether you're spinning or you're in heavy traffic or, God forbid you get into a crash. So many times when we get into difficulty, the tendency in a race car, is to look at the wall. And then what happens is subconsciously, whenever your brain sees something, it can't recognize the difference between I don't want this and I do want this. So whatever you look at, your brain thinks you want to go in that direction. So on a subconscious level, and even on a conscious level, it moves your body and your physiology. It fires off those functions that actually causes you to steer the car in the direction that you're going. That's why so many times, you got two cars coming down an empty road in the middle of the night and there's a head-on collision. Why? Well, the answer is because they're both looking at each other thinking, don't hit that car, don't hit that car, don't hit that car, and bam, they end up hitting that car. And on a racetrack, if you start to spin, you never want to look at the wall, you never want to look at the other cars, you always want to look at the empty space. So that is such a great metaphor for life. And this is coming from a guy who ran over 400 races, which is just a few more than I have. And he's saying, you know what, this is a fundamental skill that I need to remind myself of, and I need to continue to work on to always look where I want to go. So how does that pull over into life? Well, it's pretty simple. You want to sit your sights on where you want to go, your goal, your dream, your destiny, your vision, whatever the case is, and you want to be absolutely myopically fixed on that. And a lot of times that's pretty easy to do when you got momentum and you're moving forward and you got a lot of cool things going on. The place where that becomes challenging is when you run into adversity, or when you run into obstacles, or you run into difficulties, or everything seems like it's blowing apart, and you get into that metaphorical spin and you start sliding toward the wall. Then it becomes so much easier to look at the challenge and look at the obstacle, look at the difficulty, and then start to assume that catastrophe is pending. And it actually becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you're looking at the negatives and you're looking at where you don't want to go, that's where you actually end up going and moving forward in that direction. But when you end up looking at where you want to go, even if you're in a spin, even if everything seems to be breaking apart, you just fix yourself on where you want to go, realize that the spin or the challenge or the obstacle is just a small season and you need to get through it. A lot of times you make it through that area because you are telling yourself, I want to go towards what I want, and you almost totally disregard what you don't want. So in race car driving, it's super essential. You always want to look where you want the car to go, never where you don't want it to go. It's easy when things are going well, a lot more challenging when things don't go well. And that's where the daily practices, the daily disciplines, affirmations, visualizations, building yourself up, personal development becomes so important, because it's easy to fly high when things are going great. It's a lot more challenging when things are going in the wrong direction and going sideways. And that's where your training and your default behaviors go in. Those things that you program into yourself every day. Dennis told another story about a real famous race car driver who was out on the track, and he actually had a heart attack going into the turn and hit the wall, and the car caught on fire. And he was actually able to bring the car out of the turn and get it parked safely along the side of the track, and actually died as a result of the heart attack, unfortunately. And it was his training and his habitual practice again and again and again that led him to navigate that car safely through the corner and preserve the lives of all the other drivers and maybe even some of the fans that were around him. So that's where those daily disciplines are so important, so that when things don't go well, you can default back on those. It becomes automatic. You rely on those. You trust the process, and it pushes you through. It's that daily discipline, and it's making improvements every day in the small things. It's doing the small things every day, right? The workouts, the visualizations, the affirmations, reminding yourself of your goal, the positive talk, plugging into people who are positive around you, hanging out with people who are more successful than you. Day after day after day, you embed those in yourself, and you just start to move forward. And then when you do run into a tailspin or a challenge, it's so much easier to get out of that and to push through that. And then you remind yourself, and other people are there to remind you that, hey, focus on where you want to go, not where you don't. Well, as you can hear, the engines are starting to rev, so I got to get down there. But great talking to you as always. Thanks for watching. Remember, focus on where you want to go, disregard where you don't, and rely on the process and the daily disciplines that you've taken the time to embed into your life and into your schedule, and they will pull you through, and you'll not only go where you want to go, but you too can cross the finish line. Excuse the cheesy analogy, right? You too can cross the finish line and make happen whatever it is you want to make happen, because anything is possible. Thanks so much for watching. Tim from the LV. I'll talk to you soon.